Dumfries, Scotland in the early 1800s, a town in the grip of the Industrial Revolution, but not all that glitters is gold. Factory smokestacks belched into the sky while workers risked their lives daily in dangerous conditions. The docks, bustling with trade, claimed many lives as exhausted laborers slipped into the cold waters below. But that wasn't the worst of it. In 1848, an invisible killer swept through the narrow streets: cholera. The local newspapers of the time painted a grim picture: brawls in dimly lit alleys, petty crimes born of desperation, and sometimes, in the darkest corners of the town, murder. This was the untold story of Dumfries, where industrial progress came at a devastating human cost. The bustling town center of Dumfries in centuries past, where daily life took a dark turn at the mere sound of the execution bell. You see, High Street wasn't always just a place for shopping and socializing. Back then, it served as the town's stage for public justice, or what they called justice anyway. If you'd been walking these cobblestone streets a few hundred years ago, you might have witnessed the grim spectacle of public executions. Accused witches, desperate thieves, and convicted murderers all met their fate here, with crowds gathering to watch the hangman's noose do its work. Some unfortunates faced an even worse destiny, being drawn and quartered, a punishment so brutal. It's hard to imagine it happened right where tourists now casually stroll. Strange to think that these dark chapters of history played out in what's now such a peaceful shopping district. Isn't the quiet streets of Dumfries in the 1640s, a Scottish town caught in the crossfire of a war that wasn't even their own. As the English Civil War raged south of the border, bands of soldiers, both royalist and parliamentary, began spilling into these peaceful Scottish lands. The townspeople of Dumfries would wake to the sound of marching boots, watching nervously as armed men moved through their streets. These weren't always orderly troops. Many were desperate, hungry men who saw the town as an opportunity for plunder. Even today, walking through Dumfries's historic streets, you can almost hear the echoes of those turbulent times, when this Scottish town became an unwitting victim of England's bitter civil conflict. The year is 1715, and the peaceful town of Dumfries is about to be caught in the crossfire of history. The Jacobite risings weren't just tales from dusty history books. They brought real drama right to our doorstep. Imagine being a local shopkeeper when Jacobite forces march into town, helping themselves to your supplies. Or picture yourself as a farmer, watching nervously as government troops pass through your fields, both sides claiming to fight for what's right. The real kicker? These weren't just battles in far-off places. This was history happening right here in our streets, affecting real people just like you and me. Pretty wild when you think about it. Thanks to its perfect location along major trade routes, Dumfries became a hotbed for some seriously sketchy business. Imagine merchants nervously traveling these roads, their carriages loaded with valuable goods, never knowing when masked highwaymen might emerge from the shadows. Court records from those days read like action-packed crime novels, tales of midnight ambushes, stolen cargo, and daring escapes through the Scottish countryside. What made Dumfries so perfect for this underground world? Simple. Its location between England and Scotland meant plenty of goods passing through, and plenty of opportunities for those willing to break the law. The year is 1788, and the streets of Dumfries, Scotland, are alive with both charm and chaos. The legendary poet Robert Burns has just made this town his home, but behind the romantic verses and literary acclaim lies a fascinating, darker truth. While Burns was penning some of his most memorable works here, Dumfries was a town of stark contrasts. In the same streets where people would gather to hear Burns recite his poetry, others were fighting for survival against poverty and disease. The poet himself didn't shy away from these harsh realities. In fact, he turned them into powerful verses, giving voice to victims of domestic abuse and shining a light on the criminal underbelly of 18th century Scottish society. In the misty borderlands of Scotland, where legends and dark tales intertwine, the 1790s in Dumfries were marked by a series of chilling murders that still send shivers down local spines today. Picture this: candlelit taverns where whispers of gruesome deeds spread like wildfire, and narrow cobblestone streets where killers once lurked in the shadows. One particularly notorious case involved a wealthy merchant found dead in his counting house, his strongbox emptied, and peculiar boot prints leading nowhere. These weren't just murders. They were windows into a darker side of Scottish border life, where desperate times often led to desperate deeds. Medieval Dumfries, a town caught in the crossfire of history. This Scottish border town wasn't just any quiet settlement. It was basically the front line of one of history's longest-running neighborhood disputes. We're talking about the wild Anglo-Scottish border wars. In those days, you'd never know when English raiders might come storming through your village. Local families had to be ready at a moment's notice, farmers by day, warriors by night. Talk about medieval job security. This constant state of conflict shaped Dumfries into the tough, resilient town it became. A moonless night on the Scottish borders in the 16th century. The people of Dumfries lie sleeping, but not peacefully. Every creak, every distant hoofbeat could signal the arrival of the border reivers, the most feared raiders of their time. These weren't your typical bandits. The reivers were entire families, with names like Armstrong, Graham, and Maxwell, who made theft and violence their way of life. Poor Dumfries bore the brunt of it all. The town was raided so often that locals developed a special bedtime prayer. God keep us from the devil, the Grahams, and the Armstrongs. These border raiders were such a menace that we still use their name today. The word bereaved comes from their legacy of taking everything from their victims.